Hi, this is Maryland Comptroller Peter Franchot. I may not listen to every podcast out there, but I do listen to the Maryland Crabs.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Fernay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Fernay.
Hey, welcome back. This is the Maryland Crabs, and we're back with another full-fledged episode as opposed to those little crab cakes that we did during the Annapolis Film Festival, which was absolutely fantastic, and you need to attend for the 6th year when it comes around next March. This time we're going to be talking about a little bit about development. And big topic in Anne Arundel County. We've got a big shop developer here with us. We've got Jeff Jacobson, who is with Solstice Partners, not anywhere affiliated with Crystal Spring, but we're going to be talking with them soon as well.
Except they're making us drive all the way to Montgomery County.
That is true. But Solstice Partners is looking to develop a project in Eastport, right adjacent to the Eastport Shopping Center. And including the Eastport Shopping Center. And Jeff, thank you for coming in. Thank you for making the trek down here to Annapolis and talking to us. And how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here. Excited to talk about this project and development in general.
Well, I tell you, development is such a hot topic lately, and maybe it's cyclical because we had...
What's a dirty word in Annapolis?
Well, in the area. The big one, well, we got two real big ones. We got Crystal Spring, which is on everybody's radar because the tree huggers don't want a single tree cut, and that's their bottom line they've drawn in the sand. And, you know, Janet, I want to call her Richardson, but Pearson, who owns the property, just wants to develop a property, and she's very willing to do it responsibly, and it's just a matter of negotiating that out. The mayor has been kicking that can down the road, just like the former mayor was a little bit, to get that out, to do that. You've got Rocky Gorge up on 665.
That's not going to be that big, though.
Well, it's not that big, but it's kind of very controversial in that they wanted an exit onto Route 665 from the development as opposed to going through.
So you'd be coming out onto Forest, onto Aristide at 90 miles an hour.
And I was talking to a real estate person the other day, and that's just that we don't want to have the entrance to a community to be accessed through subsidized housing, is what I think. I think that's all about image.
Well, they should have thought of that before they proposed the project.
Yeah, well, true. You knew it was there, but that's that's pretty much there. Those are the big ones that are on the radar here in Annapolis, in the Annapolis Neck Peninsula, and everything else.
So there's a couple things that really people combat the development with. One is the environment, and that we've beaten that to death. But the other is traffic. So that's the big worry about people with Crystal Springs. It was traffic, and we recorded this about 10 days from when you're hearing it. And we had a huge backup this morning on Forest Drive because some contractor screwed up and didn't inform the city and the county that they were doing the work at rush hour, and people just had their torches and pitchforks out. But that also becomes a rallying cry, whether or not there's any data behind that.
Oh, sure. I mean, anytime there's an accident or a pole falls or a tree falls, the fact that Crystal Spring, I mean, it's been everything that has blocked Forest Drive for the last 5 years has been the fault of Crystal Spring. And I mean, that's,
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the table here? Because you're coming in from Baltimore, right? The Baltimore guy?
So,
big city developer.
You're one of them city slickers, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess so. My partner Alex and I, we met at a company called Mannequin, which is a regional development, construction, property management company, leasing, based out of Columbia. And we worked as developers there for 9 years together. We went through the early 2000s when it was what we call La La Land, where you could almost do no wrong in real estate, and people were buying properties. You saw dentists buying properties because real estate was hot. And they got paid for not getting anything done because they didn't get anything done for 2 years, and their property values increased more than their cost to carry. So that was a crazy time that I'm not sure we'll ever see again. And then that led into kind of the downturn, where kind of the world stopped from a development standpoint, and we all know the kind of economic crisis that we went through. So, as the company was kind of coming out of the downturn, Alex and I kind of gathered together, and the company grew up basically building most of Columbia with the Rouse Company, and experienced a lot of progress and change, and got into retail and got into a lot of bigger office development, a little bit of urban infill. But Alex and I had a great opportunity to kind of run our own projects and find deals on our own. We kind of saw the world changing as we were coming out of this kind of big recession, and saw the need for infill redevelopment. And
what's that mean?
So there's a lot of property that's in the midst of kind of surrounding development. There's already infrastructure there that's kind of past its useful life, and maybe it was an old manufacturing plant or an old industrial facility that's not being used anymore. But it's sitting in the middle of streets and sewer and utilities, and there's no trees on the site. There's nothing to cut down. And hey, is there a higher and better use for this site? So Alex and I are big believers for a lot of reasons in infill redevelopment, and that's really where we focus. That instead of going out to the county or going to do a greenfields development and cut a bunch of trees down and basically put a new road in and put new utilities in, why not go to the places where all that stuff is there already?
So this is where your project is automatically different than the Crystal Spring project?
Absolutely. I mean, so what you have here, it's a perfect example of that. You have a shopping center that was built in 1961 by the Letterberg family.
Let me interrupt you real quick here, just because we haven't gotten into that. What we are talking about is the Eastport Shopping Center on Chesapeake Avenue in Annapolis in the Eastport section. Probably most famous for one of the few shopping centers in the world that I've known that has been able to put a McDonald's out of business. One that has been unable to sustain a grocery store for
3 times,
decades, and one that's had a vacant twin movie theater for
15 years.
15 years.
I love that theater, though. That was that was an old school theater.
And that's the property that we're discussing here. And I apologize for interrupting you, but and that's what we're looking to go into that area.
Thanks, John.
And build.
Yeah, so that's a great lead-in. So here is that perfect example of what's infill redevelopment. You have a shopping center. It was built in 1961, built as a neighborhood center. And let's go back to 1961. So what did you have in 1961? Your average grocery store was about between 12 and 15,000 square feet. Today, your average size grocery store, pretty much at a minimum, is starting at 65,000 square feet, and a Wegmans will go up to 140,000 square feet.
Right, and you've got Lidl, which is coming in.
Yep.
They're trying to figure out how to get it, I think, under 50,000.
Yeah, I think they're in the 30s, maybe.
In Europe, they're like in 25 to 30, but I think their U.S. ones, I think, are like in the 40s, and they're trying to get it closer to the European model for the one that they're proposing here.
Yeah. Similar to a Trader Joe's, which has a smaller footprint because they don't have as wide of a selection, right. A wide variety.
Yeah, it's not a full grocery experience.
Exactly.
So it's more of a boutique experience. And you do have those boutique retailers. So you have this center. It was built in 1961, and obviously the landscape and the world looked different in 1961. People's shopping habits were different. And so for a variety of reasons, like you guys mentioned, for close to 15 years, you have about 2 acres of this site that's being unused. You have a dark movie theater and an old gas station parcel, and the gas station has been removed. So you have kind of on close to 7-acre property, you have 2 acres that has been sitting vacant for 10, 11, 12 years.
Non-forested property.
Correct.
With tree huggers stay home.
Exactly. So, and there's no vitality there. There's no economic interest there, and you have a property owners that really has been trying to figure out what am I going to do with this property. And there were snippets of grocery user one looking at the property, and this was back in kind of La La Land, as I mentioned before, and they never even got to a letter of intent. I mean, there wasn't enough interest. I mean, what happens is, and we hear a lot, hey, we want a grocery store in Eastport, and we like to tell people, look, this is what we do for a living. We've talked to every grocer out there. There's not a grocer who wants to be in Eastport.
There's been 3 iterations of that, or 2, or at least 2, and the last one was in 98, I think. I remember when we first moved here, it was there. But from what I understand, this is where it gets politically incorrect, but there was 2 reasons. The first is that you had public housing there and upscale East Puerto Ricans who lived there, and finding something that would appeal to both was a little difficult. And the other thing was, I think that your standard shrink in retail is around 3%, and I think I heard theirs was closer to like 8 or 9. And in the razor thin margin world of grocery stores, that just wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly it. And the real rub now is the way that The grocers' work is they're going to draw concentric rings around the site, and they count rooftops. What you'll end up counting around Eastport is more fish than rooftops because those circles instantly go out into the water, and so the trade area that they're serving is much smaller than they need. So the grocers are not interested in the site, but we've heard from the community, time and time again, we'd love to have a grocery store here. It's not a reality, but we think there's ways to help solve that problem. So basically, you have these 2 acres that have been sitting there, and I would say they're an eyesore. Minus Abbey Deals Farmers Market, there's not much going on there. We got introduced to Dan Letterberg, whose family built the center in 1961, and through a mutual friend who was actually an attorney that we both use, and he's a real estate attorney, and he said, you got to meet Jeff and Alex. They're really smart guys. They do infill redevelopment projects just like this. I think you should meet them. And this was about 5 years ago. And we met Dan and started talking about, what is the highest and best use for this site? What should be done here? And, what I tell people all the time is this site is the poster child for redevelopment. It's exactly why you need redevelopment. And the reason is times change. And, people believe the retail business in general is not what it was even 10 years ago. And we hear a lot of people in Eastport say, we just want the status quo. We want the shopping center, as it is. And that's not a reality. It's very difficult in these times. Times are changing to even keep just your kind of neighborhood retail in order. And Dan's an amazing owner, and he's works with retailers, and he does things that not a lot of other owners would do. And it's not. The status quo is not a reality.
Well, it's interesting too because I think Eastport is different than the rest of Annapolis. It truly is unique. For better and for worse, it's truly unique. I think that they're a very closed community, even with Annapolis. I don't mean that in a negative way, but they're very tight as a community, which is good. But they have a concept of keeping things the way that they want them without and development is a way of life. There's some things on Forest Drive that happened that I'm not a fan of. I live along Forest Drive. I wasn't a fan of seeing the Mexican cafe disappear in lieu of a CVS. That irritated me, but that's life. And it didn't make my life any worse per se. But that said, they have the development that's just up from Lunas, so that's on 4th Street.
Yes.
Right. So
yep. The Chesapeake Lofts,
right,
I believe is what it's called.
Chesapeake Lofts. So they took down what essentially was a defunct warehouse that hadn't been in operation for years and was an eyesore. And they put up something that is going to be more attractive. And it doesn't look like it's going to be anything sprawling. It looks, in my opinion, pretty reasonable. And they got pushed back for that. So that's where I kind of wonder.
What I think is happening with Eastport is that you've got an old working class section of town. And there's a certain element of people that want to hold on to that. Yet
but it's not. It's
been gentrified. You've got some upscale that have come in. They built on the water. They built these giant houses on these small lots, and it really has become upscale. But these people still want that throwback. It's very similar to
Annapolis.
I don't want anybody to disturb the water because now I've got my waterfront home and I'm good. Which is an attitude that's pretty pervasive around.
But I think
here.
even their motto is, we like it this way. And I think, so they resist change. And I'm not being critical because, I'm not. John said before we started recording that we're essentially kind of pro-development. I'm not. I'm one of the traffic hawks, but I'm also one of the traffic hawks that does it anecdotally without any data. Well, not Forest Drive, but sometimes I go, well, the traffic's gonna be crazy. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? And I think I'm guilty of that, as a lot of people in Eastport. And to your point, is that with some exceptions, because I think I don't belong to the health club, but it's really nice, and there's a couple places in there that I like. But it is badly need of something, and I don't understand that attitude. Like, well, we like it the way it is. I don't understand why. That's like looking at the old Parole Town Center, which was people. It was derelict. I mean that in the truest sense of the word. It was a derelict property, and people were upset they were developing it. Now,
it was a ghost.
Right.
It was a ghost of a property.
So I don't know if people are attached to it, or they just don't. They think it's going to disturb their.
How can you be attached to something in 1961?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons, and as a developer, when we go talk to communities, there's a lot of different things that come up, and usually, traffic's the number one concern. People say, "Oh my God, more traffic." But the reality is, with an infill site, especially a site like this, when it was a movie theater and a convenience store, if Dan decided, hey, we're just going to put those two uses back, and there's not a movie theater that wants to go here either.
No.
But if you could, let's just say in a vacuum,
the demand was there.
Yeah, you could put a movie theater right back there, and a gas convenience store.
You're going to see the traffic that you get.
The traffic's going to be 4 to 6 times what we're proposing. And so then people say, we want a grocery store. If we put a grocery store, it's about 8 times the amount of traffic of what we're proposing. So people like to go back to traffic. The traffic studies on this project, so we don't do the traffic study as a developer, the city does, and we paid for it, and the city went out and did a traffic study with a traffic consultant that we have no contact with, and they run the numbers, and these aren't numbers just that they pick out of the sky. They do traffic counts, and they do that's what they do for a living. They're traffic engineers, and they come back with the studies, and the numbers are reported, and those numbers are of a public record. And the reality with this project, to add 127 rental apartment units, which is what we're talking about, and about 10 to 11,000 feet of retail on the ground floor, is in peak hours we're adding for an hour. We're adding about peak hours. So this is rush hour on a weekday. We add about 50 trips to the road per hour. That's less than 1 car per minute from this project. And people are going crazy about traffic. And I get that there's traffic issues, but the traffic issues have been there over time, and they continue to build. And it's, and we want to do everything we can as a developer to help fix them.
How long have you been working on this project?
Over just close to 5 years.
Here's a naive question. Having never developed anything, why does it take so long to develop something? Is that just typical, or is that on your end, or is it on the governmental entity's end, or a combination, or?
This is I would put this in the very long, on the long side of things. We have followed there's a process in place in the city of Annapolis, and we as a developer, we just say, give us a set of rules and we'll follow them. And that's what we're doing.
Oh boy.
We're following the process.
You are new to town, aren't you?
Huh?
You are new to town, aren't you?
And we follow the process, and that's all we can do. Like, tell us what the set of rules is. Don't change the rules on us. Tell us what the set of rules is, and we'll follow them. And that's what we've been doing. And so, we've voluntarily been, Alex and I are big believers, and Dan, who's our partner, Dan Letterberg of the shopping center, he's our joint venture partner. We're big believers that, we're going to go out to the community early and often, and we're going to go out to the politicians and the planning department, and we're going to talk to people, and we're going to be upfront. And we've been doing this for 5 years. The people who come out, against the project will say this is the first time they're hearing about it, but we've had 37 public meetings in the past 5 years. 37 meetings where we've talked about this project and showed plans and have changed the plans. I mean, from where we originally started, the first thing we presented to the community was a 220-unit apartment building. We're down to 127 units. We had a flat roof. We're down to pitched roofs and gabled roofs, and using the same materials that the shopping center uses, because we heard all this feedback. And we heard we wanted food, and it's a food desert, and we're proposing a market concept now. So we're so responsive. We're changing the whole entire parking lot, which is a sea of asphalt now. We'll have stormwater management and rain collection islands, and it'll create clean stormwater and be much more environmentally friendly than it is today.
Sure, that was not a concern in 61, certainly.
No.
Just lay down the asphalt and let it go. Well, I'll tell you, you said you've had zillions of meetings, and you've got one coming up on the 19th, I think you said?
Yep, we do. We're doing a... just another kind of public presentation that we want to talk through our plans and just let the community come talk to us. And, whether you're, in support of the project, against the project, or not sure in the middle, but you're curious about it, we'd love to talk to you.
Where will that be held? That's on April 19th.
I think we're going to do it at the Maritime Museum, but we'll have details, and we'll try and follow up with you guys.
Okay,
you can post it on the site and the Facebook page.
Have you talked to the organizers of East Porter Rockin'? Are you familiar with the festival that they've got?
I am familiar with the festival. We haven't talked to the organizers.
It might not be a bad idea to turn around and see if you could, possibly be a sponsor or be a, certainly get a booth or something like that, and because that draws probably about 7,000 or 8,000 people.
Is it that many?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point too. At a recent town hall meeting, there was a big conversation in Eastport about, hey, what does the community want for the community? It wasn't specifically about our project, and a lot of what we heard was, more kind of community space, more places to gather. We want a kind of a sense of place, a place where everyone can go, and so that's incorporated in our plans. And we have, we're building space that's not, it's not rentable space, but there's outdoor fire pits and string lights and places for people to gather and community spots where you can have, an acoustic guitar at night and on a Friday night, or have a film festival and maybe show movies outside. And so we're hearing this, and we're responsive. We believe we're listening. We hear from the community a lot that, hey, these guys really are listening. We're not, not all developers are the same, and, we're not the big bad developer. We're trying to, obviously, look, it has to be economically feasible, and to just go build some retail here on its own, it's not economically feasible, and that's why nothing's happened to the site for 10 years. But we can deliver an amazing concept in a marketplace, and we can deliver, and one other big thing we heard from the community is there's not a diversity of housing options. If you're a young family, you want to move to Eastport, good luck now.
Yeah.
It's super expensive, and there's really nowhere to go. And so how does a young family move here, or how does a young professional move into Eastport? I mean, and go to Annapolis, and it's probably more pricey in general. So we've heard that time and time again. More diversity of people, more diversity of income, more diversity of housing types. There's no new rental product in Eastport, and very little in all of Annapolis.
It's interesting when you say that. It got me to thinking, because we talk about my problem, many problems with Annapolis, the way they view themselves, is that I think that a huge amount of the energy and efforts of the governmental entities concentrate on Ward 1 downtown Annapolis, that gets all the attention. And you do think about, when you said the word food desert, it was interesting to me, because I don't see Eastport as a food desert per se, because it's a smallish neighborhood within the greater Annapolis area. But when you think about what they're doing up on West Street with like the Christmas lights and and Midnight Madness, and Eastport doesn't have anything the equivalent, you would kind of have a community area. I'm thinking like to get away from the depressing Christmas depressing Christmas lights and everything that they have right now at the shopping center, but to make that a lot more livelier, because it's got a really severe lack of energy there. It's really dismal. So, I mean, looking at the residents, this is a pretty big opportunity. I'm not cheerleading just for the sake of cheerleading, but I've always thought that and I think the same on Forest Drive. I'd like to see the two strip malls on the bottom of Forest Drive do the same thing, because they're tired.
A big part of our plans too is to make this walkable and make it a walkable community. Right now, there's no reason to walk around the vacant portion of the site. There's no reason to even walk by the post office. It's just uninviting. It doesn't feel like a walkable, pedestrian, or even bikeable neighborhood. So if you look through our plans and you go through our plans, we have, we call an area the dock, and it's kind of the landing area where there's benches, and it kind of feels like you're at a dock and you're pulling up, and it's very walkable. And we're proposing and talking to the city, hey, we need the streets to be safer here. It's very dangerous crossing Bay Ridge or Chesapeake right now.
Certainly is.
We want crosswalks. Those crosswalks are not on our property, but we want to find ways to do that and to calm it and make it more walkable, and put outdoor seating and put outdoor cafes there, and have a place for the community to gather, and make it a place that people really want to stay. Right now, I believe most people that visit the current shopping center, they're going to the gym and they're leaving, or they're going to the gym and getting a coffee and then leaving. They're not staying. They're not hanging out, and it's not a community gathering place, and it's not a place where you might see your neighbors or have a chat and sit down and sit outside on a beautiful day, or meet on a Friday night, with your kids and have your kids walk around. So that's what we envision, and that's the whole idea of bringing in a mix of uses. It's there's studies all around out there, and you have planning departments all over the country or all over the world that say that sustainable development, this is the way to do it. Don't go out and knock more trees down. What that does is just takes away more open space. How do you create that space in a place that's already there? And that's what this is.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I want to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, I want to get into some of the nuts and bolts of the project. Maybe we can hit on some misconceptions and whatnot there as well. You are listening to the Maryland Crabs Podcast, and you can find us all over online, iTunes, Google Play, and make sure you give us a rating and a comment on Google Play and iTunes as well. We're on iHeartRadio. We are also on Stitcher Radio now, which is something new.
You can play us on the Amazon Echo. I'm doing that all the time. I love that.
Yeah.
I take a shower to my dulcet tones.
Yeah.
I ignore you.
Do Alexa. You can email us if you've got questions for a guest, for suggestions for a guest, something to yell at us, info@themarylandcrabs.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at MDCrabsPodcast. And, of course, we're on the Facebook at the Maryland Crabs. We've got a page and a group there. And we will be right back. We're here with Jeff Jacobson with Solstice Partners, who's paving over Eastport, apparently.
Don't miss AAMC's Denim and Diamonds Bash, an evening to remember with a cocktail buffet, silent auction, and dancing, all to support expanding mental health at AAMC. We need your support to help us double our county's inventory of mental health beds, allowing for the care of 900 patients a year right here in Anne Arundel County. Tickets available at aamcdenimanddiamonds.org. Special thanks to our presenting sponsors, the Chesapeake Bayhawks, M&T Bank, and our platinum sponsors Aerotech, AAMC Medical Staff, BB&T, Comcast, Homestead Gardens, Ken's Creative Kitchen, Tech Systems, What's Up Media, and 1031 WRNR.
Spring is waiting outside your door, and it's time to make your lawn and garden beautiful again with Homestead Gardens. Their experts will show you how to make a safe lawn for kids and pets using the area's largest selection of organic lawn solutions. Share family fun and satisfaction growing food, flowers, and shrubs together. Visit Homestead Gardens in Davidsonville or Severna Park, Maryland, and go to homesteadgardens.com for deals, events, and workshops. Live life outdoors this season with Homestead Gardens.
And we are back. Unfortunately, this is a non-drinking podcast since it's 1 p.m. and John frowned when I suggested drinking. Although John's drinking his Coke Zero out of a Natty Boh glass.
So that counts.
I guess.
In some demented world.
We're here with Jeff Jacobson from Solstice Partners, who is developing the Eastport Shopping Center, or attempting to. We know how it goes in this city, but you've been a trooper.
I'd like to go on record, though, before we got into that break, I did say he was looking to pave over Eastport, and just as a disclaimer, that was me just being a jackass. He has no intention of paving over.
Actually, so I'm learning something about development. I mean, development, like you said in the beginning, is kind of a dirty word in the city and the county. Probably for most people, developers are these guys who have big bags of money with the money symbol on the outside and smoking cigars and cackling. But, you find out that when you talk about the would you call it the infield development? It's interesting because growing up Bethesda, which was a sleepy suburb back in the 70s and 80s, and now when you go to it, I go to visit my mom, it's completely unrecognizable. But I haven't lived there for 20 some years, so for me, it's whenever I go back, it's just I don't find any signs of my growing up there. But to my mom, who's lived there since 1950, it's been this slow progression, and doing exactly what you're talking about is that you're taking things that was built in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, and those come down and new things go up. As opposed to, let's say, like Germantown, Darnestown, Outer Gaithersburg. Here it would be South County, where you have places that have never been developed, and all of a sudden you have the bulldozers rolling in, which alarms people, especially people who have been there for generations. But here, we're in an urban environment. So, I mean, to be honest with you, there's some properties I'd love to see be redeveloped, just because I think they've outlived their usefulness. I look at that on Forest Drive, what used to be the insurance.
MAIF, M-A-I-F.
Right, and what I think that was the DMV at one point, too. Or the MVA years ago.
I think you're right.
But I mean, I'd love to see areas like that. I'd like to see the areas around Chinkapin redeveloped. I'd like to see parts of Forest Drive that were developed previously redeveloped. But I mean, I think because I think it is possible for them.
Well, Chinkapin is actually working on it. They've got the design district now, and they're building a big, nice, as nice as they can be, but a public storage, multi-story public storage thing. Yeah.
But to your point, Jeff, I look at Upper Forest Drive, Old Forest Drive, where Sinfron Terrace is. Our friend Walter owns that, and when we call it Little San Salvador because all the Salvadorians live in that area. There's a big neighborhood. There's not a whole lot of redevelopment going there per se, but businesses are now opened up, so they have that cluster, which is called. It's not a city center, but it's becoming a community area that you're talking about, and we're watching that. There's a bakery going in. There's a second restaurant that Walter actually helped them get a liquor license, which was nice of him because they would essentially be a competitor. But he's trying to create that sense of place that you're talking about.
Yep.
So when you look at the project, what do you see what was your vision for the project specifically?
Yeah, so we looked at it originally and said, hey, what should be here? And honestly, when we first talked to Dan, I'm not sure Dan was a big believer that this mixed use concept was the right thing. But we looked at what could be here. So from a zoning perspective, this is a B2 zone. It's a commercial district. And there's people out there saying we're trying to rezone the property. We aren't. In a B2 zone, residential is allowed over non-residential use, and that's what we're proposing here.
Like literally over, like
on top of, on top of, and you see it.
So you're thinking that like 1901 West Street.
Yeah,
Right,
so what you see is, and you see this in cities all over the country, and you see it not just in cities, you see it in small places where ground floor retail and residential above, but, the question is why, why? What else? What else goes here? So, the reality is this 2 acres is going to get redeveloped. The question is, what's it going to get redeveloped into? And if you look at some of the other uses, we talked about some of them before, the thought of a grocery store, which is not a reality, people are afraid of traffic. Well, they really should be afraid of traffic from a grocery store. But let's talk about some of the other uses. What could go there? Offices are permitted there. You can build a big office building there. Honestly, you could take the whole 7 acres and build a big office park there.
What's included in the 7 acres?
So the whole 7 acres is the existing center. Really, the area we're talking about is just the 2 acres.
So it's from Monroe to Americana, Chesapeake to whatever that road is that runs behind the border. So
yeah, that's the property, and basically the area that we're talking about, and you can see the plans. You can go and
let's talk specifics, and you people go to eastportlanding.com. And all the plans are on there, and there's a contact form and everything else, so you can submit questions and whatnot. But specifically on the plan, as you look at the shopping center, we'll say from Chesapeake Avenue, you've got the health center health club down on the right, and you've got the abandoned movie theaters on the left with Abbey Deal and Deal's Produce, and probably where the pumps were when the gas station was there. And you're looking to put more retail and residences on the movie theater side of this, correct?
So we go a little bit into the existing center. So where Adams Ribs will be part of the new development. And we've been talking
about now Adams is if I'm trying to remember, that is the first occupied store
next
in
to
that
the movie
center
theater.
coming there. So you've got the movie theater, Adams Ribs, and then I think there's a big vacancy. Then you get into like Eastport Kitchen and the Rite Aid and everything else that's up there.
Correct. So take it from Adams Ribs. So Adams Ribs will, and we've been talking to them, and we'd love to include them in the new project. If they want to be in the new project, find a way to work through construction and have them open. And this is a group decision there.
So you're not pulling a market house on them.
No, not at all. But
get out.
Right. But speaking of marketplaces, one of the things we did hear from the community is, hey, and again, adding retail. People don't realize just keeping retailers in place is a tough job, and finding the right mix of retailers is tough. And you can see it by there's been turnover in the Eastport Shopping Center. You guys talk about the grocery stores over the years, but you have the boutique retailers and the mom and pops that it's tough now. And being a retailer, it's tough.
Well, I think a lot of that too was, and I think you were telling me about the pet grooming business that was there.
Yeah,
and
Great Paws was there. They had,
and that was the city.
They were in West Annapolis, had a small location. Business was booming. Are you familiar with the story? They expanded. They got a double space, for lack of a better term, in that center in between the Eastport Kitchen and Adams. But the city, they had to do a water connection, a sewer connection, and the city raised their rates on the fees and permits, and what they thought was going to be a $30,000 fee going in, what they knew going in, turned into a $125,000 fee, which is something certainly that I would think that Solstice Partners could absorb. Maybe not with them. maybe not welcome, but
they're beating us down pretty good.
But for
Jeff just froze.
For a small mom and pop store to all of a sudden sit there and say, okay, well, here, I've got $50,000 total to redo this. I need to redecorate my thing, and this is I've mortgaged my house to do this, and now you're telling me I need another $70,000? That's just nuts. And they've gone out of business, and I know that the sheriff's notices are on the windows, and I know the owner is suing them for back rent.
So you lose a great retailer in the process too, because a lot of that, I think you're saying that being a retailer is difficult when you're just looking at the market trends, but when you're fighting against City Hall too, no offense to the people, a lot of this is the bureaucracy that's been in place for a long time, which frustrates me because you can solve it pretty easily. We're a small town, and I've said that many times. There's no excuse to have a bureaucracy like this in a town this small. You could cure this in a week.
So will you be actually renovating the entire shopping center, or is it just pretty much from the Adams area?
No, it's from the Adams area over, but what you'll see is throughout the whole entire property, you'll see you'll see this landscaping. You'll see throughout the sea of asphalt that I talked about before. You'll see these kind of
islands, parks,
and you'll see plantings throughout. So right now you're you're not seeing much greenery.
Right.
We'll be adding a lot of greenery along Chesapeake Bay Ridge. And then, Alex and I are working with Dan on the 2 acres. He still has an ownership group that owns the rest of the center, but we think it's a great thing for the whole entire center, not just for the greening aspects and the walkability. And we're widening some sidewalks and promenades, and we're opening up the promenade and putting in benches and places for people to go.
To sit.
But what does it do? It makes it more viable for those businesses that are there. The more viable it is for those businesses that are there, over time, you'll probably see it hopefully will be easier to keep those retail tenants and the good ones, in place. And so you have this effect that you see all over the country. I don't want to throw examples out, just blindly, but a city like Charleston or whatever in South Carolina, where they've done great, they've kept their kind of historic feel and the quaintness, but you see a lot of progress down there. And what's happened is you've elevated the level of restaurants, you've elevated the level of retail, you've elevated the housing options and all those type of things. So, we envision the same thing happening here. The world doesn't stop moving. Some people don't like progress, but the world has to progress.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Charleston, because I thought if I could pick a city that I would like to emulate, as far as Annapolis, I think Charleston is it, because it's so. I mean, if you look at I think the 3 cities that are sister cities along the eastern seaboard is Newport, Annapolis, and Charleston. And I think that Annapolis has resisted what Charleston has embraced, ironically. And Charleston we're in the richest state in the country, and Charleston is in one of the poorest. And they do such an incredible job. I've been there. It's amazing. I can move to Charleston in a second, but they've done exactly what you said, is that they've held on to their heritage and just expanded upon that. And it's possible. Again, I mean, if we had another show right now about Crystal Springs, and we're going to have that talk, but, I thought what they did, besides being clumsy at the way they presented it to the community, was that it was something you said, which was a new development. There were going to be bulldozers pushing down trees, which is bad optics, and that there was the traffic was going to be hellacious by any extent. And you and I disagreed about that. So something like that, I would have my fists up. But something about what you're doing, which is not far from where I am, is something that I would wish that they would do closer to my house, which is make something that enhances the community at large.
Yeah,
I think the Marist properties.
To be honest, you and I, Tim and I, we've talked about. There's no reason since the Eastport Deli closed. The only reason to go there for us is really like Sammy's, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I don't belong to the health club. I like it. It's a little expensive, but
for the most part. But I mean, Sammy's are deals.
Yeah, Sammy's are for the most part, because that
and that wasn't the case 10 years ago for me.
No, we just haven't make a night of it. We'd go to the movie theater, which that whole theater concept was dying, but it turned into an art house, which I loved. So we'd go see Blair Witch, or we'd see My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and so we'd go there, and then we'd go to Sammy's for dinner afterwards, and we loved it. We didn't have to go anywhere.
Squisitos, but yeah, it's so there's no reason really for me to go there,
and I pass it 4 times a day easily,
and to bring something into it makes all the sense in the world, and especially if you can get it to be an upscale, thriving type of a thing. I mean, I'm just thinking, you go to Eastport Kitchen, get a sandwich. It's not the most attractive place inside. I mean, it's great, but it's not the most. That may not be the place I want to hang out and eat my lunch. And if I can all of a sudden walk out and eat in a
like a cafe, like they do downtown, right?
A cafe or something like that, or a bench even out on the sidewalk would be much more.
And by the way, so we'll probably have East Puerto Ricans right now kind of shouting at their iPhones right now, saying that we're shills for this. I would be, if you're talking about, I was very much opposed to the exit from Rocky Gorge onto Aris T. I still have some doubts about Crystal Springs or in Village of Providence Point. But this to me is something that actually I would be supportive. I'm looking at the plans, I'm looking at the iterations online.
Well, we've seen some conversations on Facebook and social media and whatnot, which really have surprised me in that they're usually with the development comes in, you either have 100% embrace or 100% resistance.
Right.
And there is a very vocal group of people that are like, no, this is a good thing. We've got a guy that, and I don't remember his name, but he says, I just moved into Eastport less than a year ago, and I live right across the street from this. So if it's going to impact anybody, it's going to impact me. And damn, I'm all on it.
No, we hear a lot of that, and unfortunately,
Johnny Kathleen Booth are another one with Quintain Marketing. Kathleen Booth, I saw her. She piped up today. She said, "I'm 2 blocks away. This is fantastic."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we envision, and we've seen it happen in other developments that we've done, and in other markets that. Now think about it. If you have a thriving center, and again, it has to pay for itself. You can't just build it. If we just said, let's build 10,000 feet of market space retail, it wouldn't pay for itself. So, people say it's just people against us say they're really building apartments and they're putting the marketplace in just to hide it. It's just an economic reality of how you build it. A developer couldn't afford to build 10,000 additional feet of retail there and charge it. They couldn't charge enough rent. They just couldn't do it. So they would just say no. And that's been the predicament that Dan's been in. So here's this mixed use concept. And imagine now that either you move into Eastport Landing and you live in the apartments above. Hopefully on the weekend, you're not even getting in your car. So you have great stuff downstairs. You walk into downtown Annapolis. Then take people who live in downtown Annapolis. They might say, let's walk down to Eastport and go grab a sandwich on the weekend and sit outside and go enjoy this marketplace. So the marketplace concept is something we really haven't talked about a lot. But this is a big investment by us as the ownership group to say, hey, look, we're going to go do what, and I'd like to say it's a smaller version of like a Union Market in D.C. if you've been to Union Market.
I love Union Market.
Or you've been to Belvedere Square in Baltimore. And all of a sudden, what do we say? So we hear people saying there's not enough local flavor. There's not enough, there aren't places to go buy the food kind of staples that we need. We're not talking about a grocery store, but we're talking about, hey, let's make an investment. We'll build out this great marketplace concept, and we're going to bring in purveyors of fine food. So Abby Deal will be our produce people. So Abby will have an opportunity. And we already programmed her outdoors as well, where she'll have outdoor space in the summer and indoor space in the winter, and potentially both. But imagine you have, an oyster bar and kind of a seafood place where you go and get your fish or your oysters. You might sit down at the oyster bar and slop down a couple, on your way.
Well, that's our big thing, too. If you could do a crab house, because Annapolis doesn't have any crab
house. So we talked about
that's
that.
Embarrassing.
A seafood anchor where you can go get your kind of fresh fish, but also sit down and order, a dozen oysters and get a half a dozen crabs.
Oh, you got to talk to the guys at Wild Country Seafood.
So we've heard that a lot, and we'd love to have them.
They're tucked way back. I mean, you need a ladder to get to their place.
Yeah, and they're the kind of last, kind of real kind of fisherman family that's still doing it. So, I mean, those are the type of people we want. We want the local vendors, and we want people. So, hey, you have a produce stand, you have a butcher, you have a seafood stand, you might have Adam's Ribs in there, and again, we're very conscious of who's in the center, and we're not going to pit people up against each other. So we don't want to deliver.
Yeah, no, you want those checks to come in every month to pay, and everybody be happy and successful.
But it's a different environment, and it's an environment where, as a developer, you make a big upfront investment because you're finishing a lot of space that's common area, and you're not charging rent for that common area. You're charging rent for the stalls, and so think about 300 to 500 square foot stalls, and some might actually be and they'll all be kind of specialty businesses. They'll be specialty. So your fish guy's not selling produce too; he's just selling fish.
Right. The oyster guy needs a special counter for shucking.
Exactly, and maybe you have a cheese person, and maybe you have fresh flowers, and you have all these things. So all of a sudden, you're probably not going to go to the marketplace at Eastport Landing and buy your toilet paper, but you're going to be able to buy the great things that you need to cook dinner. Or
sure, if you want to come down and get some oysters or a head of lettuce and stuff like that. Now, have you developed similar projects like this?
Yeah, so Alex and I have done, dating back to our whole development careers, we've developed over 3,000 residential units together, millions of square feet of office and retail. And since we've been on our own, we did an infill redevelopment in downtown Catonsville in Baltimore County, which actually has some similarities. The original building on that site was a 12,000 square foot A&P. And so,
as was this.
Yep. And so that was an infill redevelopment. And again, it was a sea of asphalt in a parking lot and kind of beyond its useful life. And what do you do with it?
That's in Catonsville?
In Catonsville.
What's the name of the project?
So it was actually we don't have ownership in the deal. We did it for an orthopedic practice, and they bought the property. We redeveloped it for them. It's beautiful. 910 Frederick Road. You can look at it. It's a beautiful project. We're completing a project in Baltimore in the Locust Point neighborhood right now. In South Baltimore, it was an old GE facility. It was in their appliance division. They used to strip transformers there. It was environmentally contaminated. Had a barbed wire fence around it for close to 15 years in what we believed was a great neighborhood, and nothing was being done. And we took on a lot of environmental risk, took it through the voluntary cleanup program, worked with Maryland Department of the Environment. Alex and I bought it, and we're delivering a mixed-use project there that it'll deliver in 3 to 4 weeks called Anthem House. And again, huge attention to detail and the landscaping and, landscape architecture and bringing vitality to a property that was doing nothing. It was doing nothing for the city and creating, tremendous tax revenue and impacts, and that's something we didn't talk about at all on this project. But we've done a study through RISI, which is at Towson, and it's an economic impact study. And so this project will bring in $900,000 a year in regional tax revenue. It'll bring
that would be $900,000 in property tax to a city that has a difficult time balancing their budget every year, even though they do.
We have a $107 million budget was submitted last night.
$107 million just released.
And 72 permanent jobs and more residents and people that are contributing to the community. So you can't get the people who want the budget better, but they don't want any more cars. They don't want that. You can't get it all, and there's always a balance. So what we believe we're delivering is great for the community. We get the question a lot, like well, if I don't live there, what's in it for me? And what's in it for me is a better experience at the center, a more pedestrian friendly, a walkable center. It's a sense of place, a place for community gathering, a place where I can go get my market goods and hang out on a market, and it'll benefit the community because, like you guys said, there's more tax dollars coming in to help all the services in a city that's having trouble doing that.
Now, as you build out the retail, and are you with Solstice Partners going to be controlling the retail at that point, or so you're actually going to be buying this from the current owners?
No, Dan's a partner with us on that. So,
okay.
but we'll manage it, and we don't.
Okay. And where do you anticipate the rent? I mean, what I'm getting is Annapolis downtown. What we're constantly hearing is that businesses are hard pressed to survive downtown because the buildings and the rents are so, like the guy running for president, the rent is too damn high. But the rents are too darn high. And to get any kind of consensus on it, because most of the buildings are owned by complicated trusts, that, it's hard to get 30 people together to say, okay, we need to lower the rent or raise the rent and stuff
and that's why guys like Walter, like you mentioned before, he'll tell you all day long that he can't afford those rents, and that's why he is where he is.
Well, he'll tell you a lot of stuff all day long.
Yeah, and so what a marketplace. Here's the beauty of a marketplace concept. Typically, if you just build inline retail, which is just your typical retail, if you build inline retail, you deliver it in a certain condition as an owner developer, and then the tenant pays rent for all the space in there, and it's space that they're actively using or not actively using, even if it's storage space or it's just a hallway or common. So they're paying for, let's say a typical retailer, say it's 2,000 square feet, they're paying rent on all 2,000 square feet. When you talk about a marketplace concept, the beauty of it is the per square foot rent in a marketplace might be high, and it might even be higher.
But you're paying for your booth.
But they're only paying for their 300 square feet that they're actually using, and we, as the developer and owner, are making that investment in the common area and the seating areas and all that places. So they're not paying rent there. And so all of a sudden it's a concept that allows these users who couldn't afford to pay $40 a square foot and 2,000 square feet, but they could have maybe pay $40 a foot and 300 square feet. So all of a sudden it's a different metric and it's a different formula that allows small users and more boutique type users to get into business and do it really well and only focus on what they need to focus on.
Right. And you'd mentioned earlier too about young people not able to afford living in Annapolis and Eastport and everything else. And these are purely apartments.
Yep. They're rental apartments.
So they're not condos. And are they size wise? Are we talking one bedroom efficiencies, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom?
Yeah. That's a great question. So part of the traffic, chatter out there with people who, one, you can read the traffic so you can go to the city and get it, and we're happy to answer information about it. But so of the 127 units proposed, 70% of them are studios and 1 bedrooms. So they're not, not a lot of cars comes with studios and 1 bedrooms. Typically there's 1 car, or, I don't think down here there'll be none, but we see that often in other markets. And then the rest are 2 bedrooms. We don't have anything greater than a 2 bedroom. And so there's a lot of concerns about parking from the outside, I think, because they just don't understand it. We're building structured parking within the building. The city code requires us to build 1 space per dwelling unit. We're well over that. And more importantly than code for an
When
owner,
you say structured parking, is that
a garage.
Okay, so underground garage type?
Yeah, there's 1 level
Surface
underground
level.
and 1 at the level of the existing parking lot. So you'll have resident parking and retail parking within the building. You won't see the garage. It's wrapped by the building.
So this is very similar probably to like 1901 West Street, which they've got some resident parking underneath, and I think it's gated, and then there's a garage that has several different levels.
Well, their big problem was there's a couple things was that
they went condo on apartments and back and forth.
Yeah, they're supposed to be condo. They assured everyone that was condo, and then they couldn't sell the condos, from what I understand. So they went.
It was a different market back then too. coming into the
that
recession.
was recession. They got nailed.
Yeah, I mean, one crucial point about parking is that, I don't know why people, from the public jump on the parking issue.
Because they can.
Yeah, but no one cares more about parking than the owners. And I will tell you that, the owners and developers. If I don't have enough parking spaces to deliver to a prospective renter, and I can't rent an apartment because there's no parking spaces, that's a huge problem.
Tim, what is one of the top bitches of merchants downtown?
Sure, it's parking. That's what they
because
say.
their customers can't park there. So again, that'll jump onto your point. Then if you've got a florist that wants to open up there, and you don't have any space for them to park, that's a short-lived tenant for you.
I always thought, and this is something that I always contended, that I wish that the ABA or the downtown partnership at some point would have done a study on how, we talked about this with Alex Pline, of how non-downtown residents use Annapolis, because I don't think anyone has a clear picture that's anything but anecdotal. So anecdotally, my wife and I, we live just in the county side, but we're separated from the rest of the county by the city. So we're in the city for everything. So we're at this giant food up here, and I pass Eastport Shopping Center probably 3 or 4 times a day. So. But we pass it on the way to downtown. But even downtown, when you talk about a food desert, is that unless I want to sit down and plunk down some money for half of the restaurants, which are tourist fare, and frankly they are, but there's very few places where you can get a quick bite or you can grab something. So I mean, even downtown, if I can get parking, because it's not the problem that you and I say it is, or that everyone else says it is, but I think that it can be an issue if I just want to go down very quickly. Plus the changes they've made. But I'd like to see continuity between Eastport and downtown Annapolis. For example, when they do Midnight Madness, everyone complains about going downtown, parking during Midnight Madness, because it is a pain that time of night. But I always would go to Eastport Shopping Center, park there, and then walk down. But I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a shuttle, especially for the events, that you connect the two areas, and that people from downtown can come out to Eastport, because no one comes out to Eastport from downtown, because why would they? They don't have a reason to so far. But I'd like to see that you kind of connect the two areas.
Again, with a marketplace concept in Eastport Landing, and certainly with the development of the Chesapeake, whatever on 4th Street, lofts at Chesapeake, as Eastport develops, as Eastport becomes a little bit more of a desirable. I mean, we've got some great restaurants. We got Bin 909 that's right around the corner there.
Phenomenal.
The city, and certainly this is a question that's been posed before the council several times, is expanding the circulator into Eastport.
They should,
and they really should. And you make the Eastport Landing, and will still be called. I mean, Eastport Shopping Center is not the most original name. Will the shopping center change names to the shops at Eastport Landing or something like that?
Yeah. So we basically envision with Dan, and we talked about it, that there'll be just components of Eastport Landing. So the lofts at Eastport Landing, the market at Eastport Landing, the shops at Eastport Landing.
Okay. So there'll be a little bit of branding, but I mean, why not make that a terminus?
Absolutely. I mean, look, they've got
buses that are already there at the end, public transportation.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the crux of multiple uses. If you think about it, you have you have everything right at that intersection. You have commercial, you have single family residential, you have condos across the street, you have Watergate behind it. You really if you had to say where is kind of the center of all uses in Eastport, it's Eastport Shopping Center, Eastport Landing. And so, how do you combine those uses and make it the most effective? And we clearly envision that this is, like I said before, it's walkable. And there's, if you live there, hopefully you're not getting in your car on a weekend, that, you're walking downtown or you're going downstairs.
I'd like to see that. We talked about that with Alex Pline about the bike thing, and you guys both shot me down. But if you have something like this, where you have that bike program that they have in D.C., where you have like the bike
share.
Yeah, bike
so
share.
You
have one here and you have one downtown, and you go back and forth.
We want to put a bike share in. I'm putting a bike share in our project in Locust Point. They're beautiful. They work great. They promote promote people not to get in their cars. We're committed to putting a bike share on our property.
That'd be pretty awesome.
It'd be great. I mean, you kind of need to have one somewhere else so people can maybe not have to do the circular route and come back.
You could do it at Eastport Landing. You could do it down at City Dock at the Harbor Master's office. Throw it up at Park Place.
Yep. I mean, the really interesting thing is when you go to other markets, and there are a lot of progressive markets. Not marketplaces, but markets in like regional markets or other cities. They don't, like in San Francisco, they won't let you put parking in your building because they don't want to promote car traffic. The more spaces you have, the more people want to bring their car there. If you present great opportunities and you make it real walkable and you have pedestrian-friendly promenades, and we're widening the sidewalk and pulling the building real far off the street and stepping the building back so it breathes and doing all the things that you're supposed to do in proper planning to make this feel like a very contextual and a place you want to hang out and a place you want to go. So if it's walkable and it's a great place to ride your bike and there's a place to park your bike, and someone said to us from the community, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a little bike repair shop in there? We'd love to do all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you're promoting people to, hey, don't get in your car. It's a beautiful day like today. I'm gonna put my family together. I'm gonna walk down to Eastport. Whether you live in Eastport, whether you live downtown, or maybe you walk from there somewhere else. And that,
it's funny if you think about the Eastport businesses, they're all kind of few and far between. There's some gems in there. If you look at the bakery, that's a couple blocks
Bakers
down,
Company,
which is awesome. And then you have Leeward Market, which is tucked way back there. You have Wild Country Seafood,
Harbor Cafe back down by Chart House.
So they're all scattered around, and there's no continuity between that. There's no sense of what you said, the sense of place.
Well, you've got the restaurants right on Restaurant Row with Lunis's and Ruth's Chris and Boatyard and Carroll's Creek.
But even so, you had an ice cream store opened up briefly just a block down from there, and that didn't survive. And that iconic barbershop, which was great. Well,
again, it's a centralized meeting place. Look, I want to take another quick break. When we come back, I'd like to hit you up with some of the bitches. People are bitching about this thing, and let's sit here and talk about and see what people are bitching about. This is the Maryland Crabs Podcast. Stick around. We're going to be talking a little bit more, and we're going to be talking with Jeff Jacobson with Solstice Partners, who is developing the Eastport Landing.
When it comes to diamonds, there are two things that matter: reputation and value. At Zachary's, you know our reputation. We pride ourselves on providing the best experience for every customer every day, because we wouldn't be here without you. But what you might not know is that Zachary's is the only diamond importer in Annapolis. We cut a check for $500,000 and deal directly with the De Beers site holder to bring you the best quality diamonds. That's just one step away from a mine. So by the time a diamond gets to your hands, only 2 people have touched it, not 6. I'm Steve Samaras, and at Zachary's, we've spent decades cultivating relationships around the world to ensure we can offer the best value on a diamond. But the relationships we value most are the ones we create with our customers right here in town.
Zachary's, online at zacharysjewelers.com. If it's a diamond, we're a good place to start.
And we're back at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. And while we were on break, hopefully you went to iTunes and gave us a 5-star rating and told the world how great we were. And make sure you tell all your friends and enemies and everything else. We are here with Jeff Jacobson, Solstice Partners, developer of the Eastport Landing not shopping center, that's a horrible word. The Eastport Landing, which will be a multi-use complex, residential shopping. But there's been a lot of objections to it. And let me just fire a couple of them off to you. I mean, traffic. What are you going to do about it? Okay, it's obviously going to bring a lot of traffic out. We need new traffic lights, and it's going to tie up traffic in the Eastport Peninsula. That's what we're hearing. Yes or no?
Not true. So
you'd go right here. Yeah, it's going to be a bitch. You guys, you're going to hate it.
I mean, look, the traffic studies have been done. The City Commission Traffic Study, it has real numbers in there, and they're not made up numbers. And what they say is, and this is the actual report, you can get it from the city, the traffic impacts of this project are negligible. And actually, no one wants to believe this, and I don't know why everyone thinks they're traffic experts in the community, but no one wants to believe it. They say, there's no way that's true. There's no way that's true. My BS meter went off. I see these comments on Facebook. I don't know why they believe that, but so it said negligible, and it said actually if there's a retiming of one of the lights surrounding the project, that the traffic conditions actually will improve a little bit. So I know people don't want to believe it, but that's a reality. So, what does it do? 127 units during peak rush hours, as I said before, adds 50 cars to the road per hour during a peak hour. Because, I mean, the reality is not everyone leaves in the morning at the same time. Not everyone even leaves in the morning.
And anymore people are working different hours.
Sure.
And whatnot. The dynamic of the working thing has changed. There's not going to be any more parking for the shopping center.
Wait, can I talk about one more traffic issue real quick, please?
No.
So
we have limits.
I know everyone's concerned about traffic. We are long-term investors here. We're making a huge investment in this property and this project, along with Dan, the owner. If we have a traffic problem or even a perceived traffic problem, and people say, oh my God, in the morning you can't leave the lofts at Eastport Landing, or you can't get to the marketplace because there's so much traffic on the road. It's horrible. We care so much about that. We don't want to have that traffic problem. And that's why we do these studies.
Now,
and that's why we test
now
it.
You just mentioned that. Okay, so and just to be clear, you are partners with Dan, whose family owns that shopping center since 1961. Okay,
Correct.
so he's obviously been the dirt of Eastport.
Yes.
In modern, and you are partners. So this is not a hey, we're going to bring in the bulldozers and the tradesmen and build this thing and leave out of here.
No way. I mean
once we're done, I mean we're going to be. If I'm renting there, I'm going to be bringing the check down to your office.
Absolutely, we're part of the community. I mean, we're the reason Dan chose us as partners is that we understood his vision that Dan's family's lifeblood is in the shopping center, and he doesn't want someone who's going to come in here and build a project and sell it. And the way that we formed our partnership was that we're in this long term, and we don't have the ability to do that. So
you're a new business wanting to open up in town, and your business just happens to be building a building.
Correct.
And building a new apartment complex.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge commitment. We're talking, somewhere in the kind of $40 million investment. We, not
going back, bringing in also nearly $1 million a year in tax revenue.
And that's not pilot. That's actual tax. Okay.
Yep. That's regional. It's not. It doesn't all go to the city. Some actually goes through Anne Arundel County, and some of the jobs do. But the way they track it is, they'll look at how many jobs come, and a bunch of jobs will come from Anne Arundel County outside of Annapolis, and a lot will come from within. But I mean, it's just it's a huge impact. It's a huge impact on ongoing economic vitality. It's a huge investment. We wouldn't be making an investment and commitment. I mean, this is what we do for a living. As I said before, this is a poster child site for an infill redevelopment. It's sustainable. It improves the environmental conditions. It makes the center more viable. It has a benefit to the community. I mean, a lot of projects don't have any community benefit.
Another objection has been the density. I mean, we've got Watergate back there with thousands of people, and we've got all these other things here.
That's John doing an impression.
Now a bunch of more people into the area, the density, and I know you had said these are all pretty much 1 bedroom and studio, and some 2-bedroom apartments. So you're at 100. How many total units are we looking at? 100.
127.
127. So we're looking at maybe 250 people.
Less.
When we're all sold out.
Yep.
So it's not much there. And you talked about making an Eastport affordable for people. I mean, what do you? And I know it's not built and premature to talk about rent and stuff like that. I mean, roughly ballpark idea. Have any idea on rents?
Yeah, we have some idea, but I mean, one other thing we'll add in is we're proposing 12 moderately priced dwelling units, which really is developer subsidy.
Right, that's a city requirement, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't have to hit it, but there's some benefits to doing it. It allow. I mean, again, these are going to be high end apartments. They're not. We're not talking about affordable housing. It's not affordable housing, so I'm close. You'll have high end finishes. You'll have the stainless steel and granite countertops, and an outdoor pool deck, and it's not.
So there will be a community pool within the apartment.
Yeah, I mean, if you live there, you can't access it from the community, but
right. Well, I guess that's for the.
If you live there, and and it'll be a great place to live, but a great place for a family to get going in Eastport. I mean, there's a lot of families that you can't find the house you want, or you can't afford the house that you want.
So with 30% being 2 bedrooms, there's probably not going to be a lot of quote families with children, and I'm sort of getting into an impact on schools. So It's probably not going to be a terrible impact on schools. No. Just like Crystal Springs, everyone says, "Oh my gosh, the schools are overcrowded." I said, "Well, who the hell is going to move into a $700,000 townhome in the middle of an old age community with kids?"
Yeah, no, there's a very low impact on school, and we do the impact studies, and we've done the market studies. There's a huge demand for apartments in the area. Annapolis is one of the slowest growing communities in the state, and I think in the country too. To be honest with you, from housing, so there's a huge demand, way bigger than what we're delivering for this type of apartments. There's not a lot of new apartments in all of Annapolis. if you think about it, and certainly not in Eastport. So it's a great opportunity for, probably not a family with kids, but for, a young professional, a newly married couple, a couple about to be married, empty nesters who just say, you know what, I sold my house somewhere else and I'd love to live in Eastport, or, I just don't need the room anymore, I don't need the space anymore.
City living, but I don't want to live in a city.
Exactly. Or I have a boat already down there, and, it's time for me to just...
Will you have any type of agreements or access for boats?
Not at the time. I mean, that's something we'd look into, but, not right now.
All right, so you've been kicking around town for about 5 years, and you're not an outsider so much because you know the area, but as a quasi...
Did you say he was kicked around town?
That's it.
As a quasi-outsider, taking a look at Annapolis, what do we got to get together here? What's the problem with the city? That, I mean, I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but we look at other cities such as Frederick and Ellicott City, and other cities, and maybe even to an extent Easton, who have kind of reinvented themselves, and we seem to be lagging behind the curve on that. As an outsider looking in, what do we got to work on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take everything into account, and the community concerns are real, but the problem with just listening to the community is they're not always the experts, and they care about how it's going to affect them, and I get that, and I do the same, and you do it in your own neighborhood, but you got to look holistically, and when you look holistically at, hey, what does this do? So let's take this project. It does all these great things that we talked about. It makes it more walkable. There's a sense of community. It diversifies housing types. It allows young people to move into a neighborhood that's typically not real young, and so it does all these great things. Well, how do we do that? Well, you can't do everything in a vacuum. You can't just focus on traffic, and you can't just focus on economic development and tax revenue. But how do you put it all together and say, hey, this is really good for, and you need champions, and you need people that are, in the process that can stand up and say, hey, let's think about this holistically. Yes, you might be trading off a tiny bit of traffic, but what are the other options, or what could happen here? And also, be realistic about property rights. And, hey, here's somebody who owns a piece of property, and the community doesn't have the right to tell them all the time what to do with it. And that's just one thing that people, it's like someone saying, I want to put a garage in my backyard, or paint my front door red, and the community gets an input and tells you what color you can paint your front door.
Welcome to Annapolis, by the way.
But that's, or let's wait to see what, or say someone says, I want to paint my front door red, can I get approval? And the people in charge say, well, I can't give you approval now because let's just see how many people in your neighborhood over the next 5 years want to paint their front door red too, and then we'll make a decision. That,
you can't rush those decisions.
That just doesn't make sense.
Right, I've got a suggestion for you that'll make this totally accepted.
Okay.
Eastport is the only Ward 8, that allows food trucks. So build in a little food truck corral behind there.
Oh, yeah.
And have it built in. Every Tuesday night, it's going to be like a food truck rodeo.
Those are big.
We love it, but that's traffic, I guess. So.
True Value's doing that. They're going to do Friday night food trucks starting in late April.
Well, they've got it up Early Heights. You just had it last year. They're doing it at Kinder Park. This summer, which is kind of neat there. I'll tell you, we want to wrap this up, but Jeff Jacobson, thank you very much for putting some light on this, and I think everybody should really go to eastportlanding.com. If you can make it, attend the meeting on April 19th at the Annapolis Maritime Museum, and you can find that information on their website as well as on your Facebook page, presumably.
Yep, it's the same thing, Eastport Landing Facebook page, and we'll have details and confirm the details. Look, we're out in the community. We've done it early and often. We've incorporated, and you can, there's many ways, and I can show you that we've shown the community that we are responsive, and we can't do everything that people want. And what we like to say, Alex and I, all the time, is that we want to listen, and we're not going to make everyone 100% happy, but we're going to try and find the spot where the most people are happy about the project.
Well, I will say that I made a call to you saying, hey, would you be interested? And you're like, how's tomorrow? It wasn't quite tomorrow, but it was last week. It was, you came right to said, absolutely, let's talk about it. I will say, certainly, you're outspoken. Hey, fire away what it is. There's been no punches pulled here or anything like that, which is, we're still trying to wrangle Senator Sarbanes or Congressman Sarbanes, but he's been avoiding us. You didn't. So
well, thanks for having me.
Hopefully don't. Be thankful that you're not building in the historic district, but that's... that's another
takes a few
thing
centuries.
To that. But eastportlanding.com. Eastport Landing is the Facebook page. Check it out. Please, anybody that's listening to this, check it out. Do your investigation before you grab your pitchforks. And I think when you go to grab your pitchforks, you're probably going to be going to Eastport Landing to maybe help break some ground there. I think it's a good idea. I think you've got an area that needs to be redeveloped.
You'd use a shovel for that, John.
Okay, well, sorry, shovels, pitchforks, that's fine. I think it's an area that needs to be redeveloped. I think you're going to do. Oh, you're going to. There's no new traffic lights. You're going to improve the traffic light that's already there, but
there's timing. I mean, we'll just follow the recommendations. So, I mean, literally, they kind of tell us what to do there. And again, like I said before, we care about not having a lot of traffic here. It's in our economic interest. It's in our emotional interest to not have a traffic problem.
Right. And Jeff Jacobson and Dennis Manikin. And Manikin is a name that I have heard for years and years and years. And I didn't realize when we came into this that you guys were partners. And
No, we're not anymore. We used to work at Manikin, Alex and I.
But okay, and you've got the experience. But I mean, it's a very well known name. Obviously, the owners of the shopping center are long term invested into the community, and you guys look to be long term invested going forward. So I think, I personally, for everybody in Eastport, I think this is a win. My own opinion. Form your own. Go to eastportlanding.com, check it out, Facebook page, and attend the thing at Annapolis Maritime Museum on the 19th of April.
And let's get a crab house going in here. We need a crab house, a real one.
I'd eat them every night.
So that's it for us. You can find us on Facebook at Annapolis, we're the Maryland Crabs. We have a page and we have a group. You can find us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast. You can find John at Annapolis. I am at Tim Hamilton 47. You can find us both on Facebook. We are info at themarylandcrabs.com. Subscribe on Google Play. Subscribe on iTunes. Give us a billion stars. Tell all your friends. And Jeff, thanks for visiting us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Right.
Hey, Alexa, play the Maryland Crabs.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.